How do I look, Vlad?
Amazing. Beautiful.
Yeah? Do I look big? I don't care about amazing, beautiful. Like, I don't care about anything but size. Like lean bulk, man. I've been gaining. Cool. All good? Awesome, awesome. Welcome to the Lean and Strong seminar, everybody. Hope you're doing well. I'm happy to have you here. And we're going to start off with a little bit of a Q&A, just so I get a feel for what you guys would like me to talk about. And also I'm going to share with you a few very, very practical tips from the aspect of behavior change combined with health and fitness. And the reason why I focus so much on behavior change, you guys know if you followed my content for a little bit of time, I like to talk more about personal development than the actual mechanistical stuff that is happening with our bodies. And the reason why I want to do that is because we almost know with 90% of cases what we need to do to achieve success in a certain area. But the issue is that we don't simply do those things. And all of us here in this room, we know that we should eat a little bit more vegetables, we probably need to sleep a little bit more, we probably need to exercise more, and we probably need to manage our stress better, right? It's like a universal prescription that we all know that we need to do. But sadly, none of us almost do it. I mean, we're all striving to be good at these things, but we barely succeed. So that's why we hammer so much on personal development, because that's the area that needs to be combined with all this knowledge from fitness and nutrition and everything, because all of us probably know more than we're doing. We know much more than we're implementing. Much, much more. You probably know more about nutrition right now than the best nutritionist 20 years ago. Like even if you watch 3-4 videos, you have a summary of the science, you have summary of things like calories, macros, meal timing, intermittent fasting. Doctors 100 years ago would let blood like just flow from people and they would die, right? They had no idea, right? We know so much more, but we're not doing more. So that's something we're going to focus a little bit today. But first off, let's do a little bit of questions. And I'm going to actually make this very, very interactive. So I'm going to call you guys out on a few things here. So questions, it's really about understanding that a problem that you have while you're taking action can only be solved if you have a problem while you're actually executing, going back in your head, achieving more information. But if you have an issue stuck in your head, information overload, you don't know what to do, you don't know how to start, that's when you need to start taking action. So it's about understanding that stuff that happens in the real world outside is the stuff that can be only handled by action, then coming back for more knowledge, and then you go back. So it's kind of a balance between consuming content and applying content. And it will take you years to find a balancing point. I found a balancing point of reading, let's say, 1 to 3 books a week, right? That's for me enough of information, even plenty. When I say 1 to 3, the reason why some books are like 14 hours audiobook, 1,000 pages and things like that. So you really need a whole week to digest that, even if you're really, really into reading, which I am. So even those books, you can get 1 or 2 good ideas from them. And you try them out, see if they work for you, if they stick, if they don't stick, and you just have to let go of them if they don't fit your lifestyle. Because all of us here, we're going to get different things out of different books. First thing I read, Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now. I was like, what is this dude talking about? This makes no sense. I'm falling asleep. And then I dropped it, and I came back a couple of years back, again at the book, and it all made sense because it wasn't the right thing at the right time. So there's also a situational kind of, time and a place in your life where you are, where that idea is going to start making sense so you can take action on it. How do you manage your sleep? How do you manage multiple different areas of life? So your example there is social skills and fitness and business and all these other things. And people want to do everything at once. And the analogy I like to use for this is the stove analogy. If you have 4 stoves on a, let's say in your kitchen, and you have a limited amount of gas that you can use to power up all those stoves. So if you try to cook something really nice on a fitness stove, which is, let's say, your body and your physique, and you amp that up to like 5 out of 5, then you probably won't be able to amp up other stoves to be 5 out of 5. So something will have to suffer. If you try to do everything at once, you will not be able to get anywhere. So you actually have to prioritize. If you're doing immersion in business, you're probably going to have to put everything else in maintenance. That's just the way it is. Like, you cannot do everything at once. People are overestimating because we're all living in this hero world, right? If you just crush it, sleep 3 hours, you can get everything done. The reality is, I mean, if you look at the science of it, if you look at the research, if you sleep deprive yourself even for a few hours, your mental and physical performance are just going to go down. You're definitely damaging your ability to burn fat and build muscle. I mean, all these things getting affected, so you're not going to reach your fitness goals. And when we're talking about business, I mean, if your mind doesn't work and if you're just constantly distracted, which happens if you're sleep deprived, you're not going to get very far. So you got to actually pick one, immerse yourself, get to a decent level where you can maintain that, and then switch to something else. That's, I mean, the only way I found works really well, and I think that's, I mean, it makes sense that it should work like that. I mean, it just makes sense. It's supposed to be like that. It's fair, right? You focus on something, you get results from that. But you can't focus on a billion things at once. Question here?
Yeah, about the sleep. What do you think about polyphasic sleep?
Polyphasic sleep. Research on that is limited to army soldier situations where people are, let's say, they will be able to function somehow despite having less sleep, but we're not talking about optimal functioning. So there's a difference between that. Polyphasic sleep versus 9 hours of sleep at night, or let's say a combination of 7 hours at night, couple of naps throughout the day, will beat polyphasic sleep anytime in a study or anywhere else, at least from what I've seen. Polyphasic sleep is kind of like, okay, how do I survive this situation where I can't sleep at all, but I just can get a little bit? How can I get alive and back home? You know, that's the situation. And people take that research and they're like, okay, I'm going to be the CEO who's going to sleep 20 minutes, you know, a couple of times a day, and I'm going to try to do that. And it just doesn't work. Like, we have pretty good evidence on that. Yeah, this is a question on supplements that I get almost every single seminar. And you guys, I mean, if you follow my content for a while, I don't recommend a lot of supplements. And the reason for that being is that they are not necessary if you're managing your nutrition properly. A few things that can be useful in London if it's a winter, if there's barely any sun, vitamin D, it's pretty useful. Creatine monohydrate works for most people, so on an average it's going to yield some performance benefits, and it's very cheap, so it's used, I mean, it's a good thing you can try out for yourself. Protein powder can be useful in some situations if you can't get your protein, well, let's say traveling, you hate cooking or things like that. I would encourage you actually to cook and prepare your own food, just for the reasons of you're going to get more nutrition for less cost, as well as you're going to learn a valuable skill that will change your life, and that's a kind of a lost art of cooking. I can't do much, by the way. Like, I'm not like a chef or anything, but I'm not gonna die if someone gives me raw ingredients. That's what I'm saying. And yeah, one thing there, another supplement that might work is caffeine if you're looking for a quick performance boost in the morning, if you're training right after waking up. I can't really vouch for much more. That's pretty much it. Like omega-3, I don't want to forget fish oil, so yeah, that has some benefits. Holy grail of fitness, right? How can we lose fat and build muscle? The first thing you want to take a step back there, and for whom that can actually happen. I mean, on average, when we're looking at fitness, number one to understand is really that all the results in fitness will fall under the scope of genetics, right? So there are people who will be able to build an enormous amount of muscle on a caloric deficit, no problems. They're going to get super jacked, and I mean, I hate those people, but they're out there, right? For most other people, if you've been training for a couple of years, and if you're fairly advanced, if you're somewhat decent in terms of your nutrition and everything else, you might be building a tiny bit of muscle, but the fat loss, I mean, it can be achieved pretty easily, because it's almost like a guarantee that you're going to lose fat if you're in a caloric deficit. Building muscle it rarely happens for advanced athletes in a caloric deficit. I mean, a substantial amount of muscle. If we're talking about a small amount, which is very insignificant, that can happen. Now, if you're a beginner, if you're just starting out overweight, damn, you're going to see an awesome gain, even if you're in a caloric deficit. If you're a beginner, you can recomp, and that works really well, because most of the energy that you're actually storing, I mean, body fat can also be used for building muscle. So even though you're losing fat, you still have plenty of energy there. Plus, you're a newbie most likely, so you're going to be very sensitive to gaining muscle. So those newbie gains, as you guys know, and you can build a very decent amount of muscle in the first, let's say, 6 months of your training, even though you're in a cut. But if you're advanced, I mean, it's probably not going to happen for you, right? And there's also non-responders that are going to lose muscle as much as muscle as fat, which is crazy, right? And I mean, those people are very unfortunate. Again, it's a concept of bell curve, right? So those people that are, most of us are average in the middle, so we're going to experience most of fat loss, let's say 75% of losing fat if you do things right, 25% of muscle. And I mean, muscle loss in general, everybody thinks it's bad. If you lose any muscle, I mean, you're going to regain it very fast. So there's really no problem with that. Muscle memory is real, so don't worry about losing muscle on a cut that much as try to maximize fat loss to really get shredded, and then you can regain muscle really, really fast. Thinking about absolutes or limitations, I mean, you're just putting a limiting belief on yourself, and in most cases it doesn't serve you. So these kinds of beliefs like, okay, I'm limited by my genetics, I'm limited by something, it just doesn't serve you at all. Like, there's absolutely no benefit of even thinking like that. But how would you know? It would be very, very individual, pretty much unmeasurable. Relatively, I mean, unless you have very, very expensive equipment and someone monitoring for 45 years of training, you know, like.
What is the science between that?
There's really no way to actually know how far you would be from your genetic. We can estimate because let's say first year of training you gain, I don't know, 20 pounds, second year 10, third year 5, then 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, maybe recomp a little bit. Then there's also per muscle group how much you gained, you know. So you see how much that complicates things, and also you get older, you get more resistant toward training, so you can build less muscle. I mean, all these things. So there's so many different. But I mean, gaining strength is actually a pretty good indicator of progress. So you will reach your cap, but almost even the most advanced lifters, they can still keep getting stronger, which is very interesting, up until a point where age starts limiting them. Like even the most advanced, like if you look at very, very advanced powerlifters, they can still gain strength, which is crazy. And obviously how much you can gain is also genetically determined. Now, question for you guys, which I'm going to start with a little bit of a story. So back a couple of years ago, when I was, before I started exercising, when I was just starting out, I was like rebooting a lot of times, you know, like trying to get this habit rolling. I was trying to master this area of my life, right? I just figured out, here's a generic plan, I'm going to get jacked. I'm going to become a bro. I'm going to eat my protein after workout. 2 seconds as soon as I drop the set, I'm going to drink my protein shake, go home, get my chicken, broccoli, rice, and get all that handled. Now, in the beginning, what was happening, and I will ask you guys if you resonate with this, is that I would just go home and after work, my plan was to exercise 4 days a week. I would come back home and I would be like, it was 5 p.m. I have just the right time to pack my clothes, go to the gym, hit the gym, come back home, eat something, go to bed. You know, that's kind of that's exactly how much time I had. You know, exactly to the minute I had to be ready. And I would come back home from work. This would happen multiple times, and I would just notification phone rings. Like a friend sends me like a YouTube video. It's like, hey, just check this out. It's like 2 minutes, and I check the video, and it's like a funny video. It's really cool. Then I click on the suggested video, which was even funnier, and I got the suggested video ends, and then I got a notification that I missed my TV show, which just came out yesterday, and I missed the episode. So I was like, oh shit, I can just watch it really fast because I'm in a rush. I can just skim through it. I just want to see the fight scenes. You know, I love science fiction, so I watched like The Flash, The Arrow, and all these things. So I love fight scenes. I scrolled through that, then another notification comes in. My friend's texting me, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? Let's plan up. And we end up chatting, and I realize that it's 7 o'clock, and I have only 30 minutes to go to the gym. And it's going to take me 30 to get there, 30 to come back, and I won't have time for food, and I won't be at bed in time. And I'm thinking in my head, well, it's probably best if I just skip today, because I won't really have time to do all the things that I planned. It's going to be a shitty workout anyway. So I might as well just do it tomorrow. Who here has been in a similar situation?
Yeah.
Okay. We alluded to in the beginning is that it's really about my lack of motivation, my lack of mastery of my habits, or my lack of mastering my myself. Basically, I couldn't resist, you know, and that's an issue. And we think of it's always us, right? It's always us. We need to get stronger mentally, physically, and it's always us. And in a lot of situations, it's really that we're kind of set up to fail. Like we're set up to fail to begin with. If you think about my environment, and pretty much any one of us here would fail in that environment. And one interesting thing is that whole willpower thing, that we think we're like almighty if we have a lot of willpower, and we can build our willpower to a level where we can actually master these things. And it doesn't actually work. And if you look at the most successful guys in fitness, and I'm going to draw a little bit of how this behavior occurred and why it happened. If you look at the most successful people in business, it's not really that, or in fitness, it's not really that they have more willpower, but it's just that they've managed to find a way to execute the behavior without the need of willpower. So what happened there in this situation is I got triggered. So trigger was the social media thing, right? Trigger caused an impulse in my brain. It's like, okay, this is cool. Let's continue doing that. And then I did, let's say, I'm gonna start drawing nicer. And then I did this behavior, right? And this behavior was the trigger to another behavior. And then I just spiraled out of there to to YouTube, right? And the problem was there in my case. And what I'm going to, I guess, show you guys a little bit here is that this behavior, let's say, will lead to a reward. And the reward leads to, let's say, a dopamine release in your brain, which teaches you to seek the reward again, which is, again, going to be a trigger to another behavior, and bam, you just spiral out. But there's one point that we're missing here. It's this point here. Because there's a point between an impulse and behavior that we're not really looking at, and that's a very trainable point. And this point is called awareness, right? And that's the only factor that was different for me when it happens now than it used to happen back then. That's the only thing that is different, because now I have awareness. So now if I get triggered when I'm home, I'm aware of it. I know what's happening because I know my own brain. And it took me 5 years to figure this out, that I can become more aware of what's actually happening to me. And why am I making this point? Well, I'm making this point because we think that we're in control over our time. We think that we're in control of our lives, but we barely have any control if you think about it. Most of us. Most of our day is spent on other people's stuff. Like whatever other people are throwing at us, or the stuff that we think we need to do, but someone else told us that we need to do it. You know, like we think that we should do, like we need to, I don't know, read this book, and you're reading this book because, I don't know, someone tells you, like a guru online tells you read this book. Is that really your choice, or that thought got inserted into your mind that you need to read this book? Like think about it. How many more books do you need to read? Probably just that one book that you read 3 years ago and you didn't take any action on it. Then you read 350 afterwards and you barely took any action on those as well. And this point here, the point of awareness, is something that is very, very trainable by starting to view yourself as a scientific experiment from a third-person perspective. So when this happened to me, and it happened like probably about 100 times, I started realizing, well, okay, if I'm my own scientific experiment, what can I change and observe a difference? And the first thing how I fixed this was I wasn't coming back home. I had my gym clothes in my car, and I would drive instantly from work to gym. Problem solved. I had no time to get triggered, and I fixed it, right? And the only reason why I could do that is because I knew that this impulse would already occur, like this trigger and impulse would occur, because all my friends usually start texting me after work, but I was already in the car on the way to the gym, so they had no chance. Like I was already invested. So this didn't have any power over me. And this is just a simple example. What I'm trying to make a point is that how many hours of your day do you really have under your own control? And it's important for us to look at that, because in the modern environment that we're living in, we're constantly going to be triggered by different things. Whether it's this is like your friends, companies, YouTube notifications, Facebook notifications, Instagram, ads, friends, family, freaking people in the street, police cars, a neighbor upstairs. All these things are triggering you constantly throughout the day. And how many of those things are you letting to lead to an impulse and then to a behavior? And that's important for us to realize, because if we, let's say, aren't able to say no to these things, what's going to happen is that you're not going to have time to pursue your own dreams. Let's look at a habit like exercise, right? We can look at any habit. It has two parts, right? And I'm going to use the analogy of a plant, right? So we have this terrible drawing of a plant, and we have ground, and we have the plant's roots, right? So this is the, I'm going to make it a little bit more prettier, right? So I'm going to make it a little bit more pretty. Yeah, it looks awesome. Don't judge me. So this here, this is the root of the plant. The plant can only grow as much as the root grows. Fair enough, right? If the plant is too big, the root's too small, plant dies, right? Similarly, that's how it scales. Now, if we apply this to habits, this here is how ingrained that habit is in your mind. How many reps did you put in to master that habit? That's your root. How consistent you are with going to the gym, how consistent you are with making videos, going out, how consistent you are with executing your business to-do list or whatever it is. That's your root. And by being more consistent, you're growing that root. And that consistency allows the habit itself, which is the action, to occur. And the action can only be as effective as the root is. So, example from exercise, if this root right here represents 20 minutes of exercise, so I can only build 20 minutes of exercise in this. And if I want to exercise for 1 hour, that's going to be unsustainable for me, and the tree is going to die, right? Very simple way to look at habits. So if you don't have a very strong root, if you haven't mastered a habit yet, you won't be able to take on a huge habit if you haven't had the root to build it up. So the tiny habits model is very interesting for this. So what they say basically is start building the root first, and when you master the root, you can start increasing the action. You can start building the higher tree. And the root here is a concept called myelination in your brain. So your brain neurons basically, they have this connection between them, and the more repetition you have between the two neurons, they're more connected. That's how habits are built, right? You can have a stronger connection using a compound called myelin, which is basically a fatty compound in your brain. And the more reps you put in, the stronger it gets. So this is done for good habits or bad habits. Your brain doesn't know the difference between good or bad. Basically, if there's a repetition between a trigger and a behavior, it just gets connected really, really strong. So by repetition, you grow your roots. And by growing your roots, you can build a bigger habit. You can build a bigger result from this. And why am I saying this is because when people are looking at a habit or a behavior, they only care about the result. Nobody's actually looking at how much they can sustain in their life. If I aim to achieve a huge result, I need to have a supporting structure for that. So the habit itself, the action, the result, is only as good as the root. And before you master the root and the consistency, it doesn't even matter what the result you're getting in, because it's only going to be short term. So the coin flexible habits is, if I'm in London, example here, my workout shrinks from 2 hours to 30 minutes. So my plant gets smaller because my roots can only support a very small plant. Simple analogy, right? So I'm very flexible. When I go back to my location where I'm going to stay for a month, increase workout to 2 hours. And I'm very flexible with that because the reason why I'm doing my workout still here, why I'm not skipping my workout, I'm going to get to your question really soon, is because even if I'm training for 20 minutes a day, I'm still building an identity of a person that is training, if that makes sense. So I'm becoming the type of person that doesn't skip workouts. Even if I'm meditating for 2 minutes, I'm still the type of person that meditates. It's not important whether I do it for 30 minutes, whether I do it for 5 minutes, whether I do it for a minute, for 2 seconds while I'm, I don't know, in the toilet, flushing the toilet, meditation, feel it. So why am I saying this is because that identity that I built, even the 20 minutes of training in a day, that's called a keystone habit. A keystone habit is something that will improve every single area of your life if you work on just that one thing. Because that training that I did today made all my food choices better, made me feel better, made me want to stick to my diet more, and I felt like I was in control. If I skipped that workout, have you guys had the experience like you were in a diet and you eat like a tiny little cookie and then it spirals, you eat the whole fucking bag and you eat the second bag and it's like, who had that experience? Yeah, right? So it's kind of like that what the fuck effect, or how do you want to call it, right? It just spirals really, really fast because when you fail that first attempt, it's kind of like a huge dent to your identity and you're like, okay, the diet is over anyway, like I blew the day, But the funny thing about that is that we don't realize that small kind of thing that we ate there, let's say the cookie was 100 calories and you had a 3,500 calorie deficit that week. What the hell, man? Like you were still 3,400 calories in a deficit with that one cookie, but not after 2 bags, Like after 2 bags, there's no more deficit. So it's interesting how we can spiral out of control if our identity gets broken.